Good afternoon everyone and welcome to Our Space Gallery. I'm Anthea and together with Robert we are co-curators here, especially for this exhibition which is a passion of mine, The Legacy of Richard Wallace. I'm delighted to introduce Judith Waring, the artist who's originally from Northern Ireland but lives in Denmark with her husband Richard, who's here as well. We have people as far away as Killyleagh today visiting Our Space. And far away as Belfast, Ballyhinch, and South Africa. It's a real banger tribute to have. So welcome our South African friends, and do linger and talk to Judith afterwards. So very briefly, Lisburn was the whole of County Antrim, in fact, was owned by Richard Wallace and his forebears, the Hertfords. And they had many thousands of pounds to spend on the art auctions of Europe over the decades and centuries. Although Richard Wallace grew up in Paris even, and was reared by his grandmother, he essentially was a Frenchman. Long story short, his father died, he wasn't popular, nobody liked him here, the 4th Marquess of Hertford, and then he chose to come and fight 2 court cases to become the landlord here and inherit some of the aspects of that legacy because he was illegitimate. However, Lady Wallace was a perfume seller in Paris, and together they had 1 son, and on it goes. There's a bottle of empty Paul Roger champagne in the cabinet, to point that out. So the Paul Roger family, which is a famous champagne house in France, is linked to the Wallace story, which I think is great to know that you could treat yourself to a glass of champagne in a legacy sense of the word. Also, the other liquid is water, because he gave the 50 Wallace fountains to Paris in 1870 so that people had water to drink. But not only that, they had an aesthetic as well, and the fountains were designed and made in a foundry in France, and indeed that foundry still exists. So we would love to hear from Judith about her week in the Wallace Collection in January, and that's our annual commitment here at Our Space to encourage Northern Irish artists to have that opportunity. And Robert Peters is here today. I'm sure he'll be delighted to talk to anybody too about his time there. And then we'd like to thank the Arts Council of Northern Ireland through the lottery programme for supporting all the work we do in Our Space, and John Bradbury, our board member, for being here. So Judith, welcome.
So thank you, Anthea, for the introduction, and thank you all for coming along today. It's funny thinking back to that wintry week in January. It was snowing in London, which is quite unusual, and I was totally immersed in the collection. It was so bright and dazzling compared to the world outside. But one evening I went for a walk and went into a bookshop, and I found this book by Julian Green, and he was not dissimilar to Richard Wallace in the way he's American parents, but he was born and brought up in Paris, and he wrote little pieces, little fanciful pieces. But one struck me, and this kind of informed the way I took what I'd seen during that week. And I'd also had 2 weeks in Paris visiting all the fountains, so it was a distillation of all this stuff. Sorry, I need glasses to read this. So he said, it's a visit to Notre Dame just after the war in 1946. There are days when objects speak, as if under the impact of some sudden inspiration. In a language that is virtually incomprehensible, they shout a message to us, the meaning of which becomes apparent only when it's too late. It is almost as if matter, receiving the gift of vision, were moved to prophecy, to no avail, of course, for when was a prophet ever listened to? And that really struck me walking around looking at all these fantastic objects in the collection. And I decided to think about the fountains, because they were the great benefaction, as Anthea said. And in a way, this work is all kind of touching on the fountains, both their form and also that materiality of water. Although, of course, there's no water here, it's suggested. And one of the things with the fountains as well, they've evolved, they've kept up with contemporary society as you go along. I mean, some of them are painted now, not the distinctive green. There's yellow and blue and pink. But they also have these cups that they're elephant hooks, and the cups are missing. The cups disappeared around 1952 owing to hygiene issues. So I decided, having looked at a number of fabulous porcelain items in the Wallace collection, the Sevres porcelain, that I would reimagine, recreate these cups. So I have these two pieces here. And I was thinking about sustainability and whatnot, so I made them paper cups. As you used to get at children's birthday parties and things. And these are, the decorative kind of idea behind these are based on the Maiolica collection in the Wallace. So this is Renaissance ceramics, tin glazed, and that blue and yellow are very distinctive colours within the collection. Also the decorative scheme, they had a lot of grotesques on it. So I took that idea of the grotesque and the hands and feet of the caryatids, the goddesses that support the cupola, and I scaled them up and put them on the paper cups with the little cable tie chain. So these, I think, are cups for the 21st century. And they also have a reference to two fabulous drinking cups in the collection as well, which you probably remember if you visited. They're called the Golden Cups of Eternal Stability. And the blue in them is made from woodpecker, not woodpecker, I'm woodpecker feathers. These are made from kingfisher feathers. And you think, how many poor kingfishers died to produce this really vivid blue on the cups? And then the Wallace collection itself is very focused in terms of fine art on two dimensions. A lot of painting, a lot of absolutely stunning paintings. Again, of the period, the gold, the gilt frames. And I was thinking about the fountains are extremely three-dimensional. How would they look in 2D? And I took the concept of the goddesses, the caryatids, who in popular culture have been given virtues. They're to us now probably very Victorian virtues, and you can see them on the poster outside in English, they're listed there. So it's goodness, charity, temperance and simplicity. And I had them fabricated using Paris plaque, the distinctive signs of Paris, and they're different from everywhere else in France because they've got the dome where the arrondissement number goes, and that just had that visual reference to the dome of the fountains as well. And the font I selected has a teardrop. If you look at the S or the C, there's that teardrop there, and again we get the water thing coming back. So they were made in Nantes, where Charles Leborg, the sculptor who created the fountains, was born. So we have a nice kind of link. Because in a way the Wallace collection, as Andy was saying, it's about all this linking, these things over time that kind of crossover touchstones, and that really struck me with the collection. The piece in the centre of the floor is based on historical events. So before Wallace made his donation, Paris had been besieged by the Prussians. The city had been cut off, so water supply, of course, was problematic. And I think that's probably what prompted his donation, his benefaction after that. But between the siege and its release and the fountains being produced, there was a bit of an anarchic period, the Paris Commune and these communards who took over the city. They were really disorganised and it didn't really go anywhere. So I was thinking about, this is kind of the prequel to Wallace. This is the communards fountain. And of course it has visual references to Wallace's fountain. And, you know, my little joke with the Paris goblet as well, refined by the beautiful Irish linen. Yeah, and this piece here, again, you can see it's got that connection with the fountains, the feet of the caryatids, because they're all quite different. There are four. They're contrapposto, but they have, you can see which foot is forward, two left, two right. They're also, the clothing is also slightly different on each of the figures. So they've been given, I suppose, personality, which maybe that's why they listed these birches being attached to them. And I've made these from floral oases, so the things you normally stick your flowers in for arrangements. And it's sort of, again, playing with the way we see things. So that's actually the base. I don't know whether you know the fountains well enough. They have a base to them, and it's kind of moving them upwards to give us a different view. And then this was a working drawing. Just I was thinking about sculpture and how sculptors always want to defy gravity, but you can't. And where are we touching earth? Where are those contact points? And at the back there, I just produced some, I took lots of drawings, but I selected these stylized images from the fountains, the dragon scales on the cupola, the Ionic capitals that the caryatids are then holding up. And the braided piece in the middle is a reference to the wall. There's one wall-mounted fountain left at the back entrance of the Jardin des Plantes. And they were originally in railway stations, if I remember correctly, but only one survives, and it really is very lovely. Quite different from the freestanding ones. So that's just a little footnote to it. Yeah, and I suppose that thing about making these contact points over time with visual references and whatnot brings us back to Lisburn, because I think Wallace can't exist really without Lisburn. I mean, world cities, you know, London and Paris, but Lisburn is the pivot. It's there in the centre, and the others are satelliting around it. And I think that's very much what I got from the collection. Also, the fountains were a public demonstration of philanthropy. But when you go into the house, although it's extremely grand, it was still a domestic space. It was a private space. All that stuff was, you know, there for Wallace and his friends to look at and admire. You know, we wouldn't have got in there back in the day. And then it's granted to the public now, where you can go for free and be amazed at all the objects there. So I've probably waffled on a bit much. The objects are whatever you want them to be, so please do wander around and have a look. And I'll be here if you want to chat. So,